Okay. So, today's first day of class. So we'll kind of go over CS1 first, and then we'll go right straight into the content. So this is the team that will be managing CS1. I'm David Chung, and I'm the founder and director of CSY itself, and I'll be your lead lecturer today. Um, um, if the other TAs want to introduce themselves, here, Ashank, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Ashank. I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm the assistant director here at CSYA, and I'll be lead lecturing some of the courses pertaining to machine learning later on in the CS1 course.
Hello guys, my name is
Johnny, do you
Johnny
want to introduce
Shen.
yourself?
Hello guys, my name is Johnny Shen, and I live in West Lafayette, Indiana. And I am the head of logistics for CSYA, and I'll be TAing for today and on day 3 as well.
All right. I think is Ethan here. Ethan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. So my name's Ethan. I am a high school student in Australia, and I will be one of the TAs for this session, and I'll also hopefully be aiming to be the lead lecturer of some other sessions. Yeah, that's a bit about me.
Yeah. So those are our TAs for now. If you guys have any questions, please post them into the class chat. You guys should be able to see it now. This chat will only be open during class time. For all the other ones, you are free to just send messages with questions in the other channels. So basically, the assignments will have classwork, which will be kind of like progress checks. Post those into the class chat in the CS1 Discord, and you can feel free to ping the TAs or myself for any questions. Homework will take place on Codeforces. So this link, I know you guys can't click it, but it'll be posted into the homework channel after this lecture is done, and each homework will be due the next class. Do note that like this isn't a grade that will go on your transcript, but we really encourage you to take this opportunity and really, I guess, like progress through this class. No one is going to be giving you a grade like an A or B or whatever, but this opportunity really gives you something that's hard to get, I guess. And following through with this course really opens up a lot of doors. And content that we'll cover in 3 weeks of live lecturing and then the 1 week of the final project will really give you a good view of what computer science really is like, and it will leave you with a project that you can always put on your resume. And it'll also give you the experiences that you need to take on harder computer science classes, whether that's in high school or in college. So starting off, we're going to be talking about data types. So data types are kind of just like what we generally, it's like the foundation of what everything is built in coding. So we have integers, which are just like integer numbers, kind of what you would learn in like a typical math class. Floats have a decimal, and it can't like not have a decimal. So it'll be like 1.0, 1.5, or like these numbers that we have here. Strings can pretty much be anything, and they're use quotation marks to identify a string. So it can be like hello or John. You can put a number into the quotation marks and it'll be considered a string. And then we also have booleans. Booleans are either true or false. So it's like a yes or no kind of thing. In Python, we do capitalizing, so it'll be true or false. The first function that we're going to look into is the print statement. So printing is kind of our general way of outputting something and testing different things. So if you guys, okay, let me try to share my whole screen so you guys can see. Can you guys see the Replit? So if you guys haven't yet, I would need everyone in this class to make a Replit account. So the link should be in the announcements channel, I believe. I'll give you guys like a solid minute to do that. You can't see anything. Is that the same case for everyone else? Okay, so I'm gonna restream. I'm so sorry. maybe it's working now, Kexon, just depending on how much storage you might have, and also just so we avoid all the complications of downloading Python and all the fun that goes with it. So once you're in here, you'll click on Python, since that's the language you'll be learning, and you can title it anything. I'll just say CS1 class 1. And then you'll be brought to a screen like this. Obviously, it's loading for a second. This area is it's where you'll be writing your code. And then this is kind of like where you output different things. So if we go back to the presentation, I'll send a link to the presentation. So if it's lagging, you guys can follow along. It'll be in the resources channel. Anyways, so the function we're looking into is the print function. So basically, we write print and then parentheses, whatever we want to print, and we make sure to close the parentheses. If we don't close these parentheses, Python is going to go crazy and think that something, it's going to look for the last missing parentheses, and it's just going to go crazy and give us an error. So start off with, we just write print, and then it kind of auto-completes that for us, and we can write anything. So let's say, like, hello class. Usually in this, I guess, program replit, it notices that there's a quotation mark and it goes in. Make sure you put everything in between the quotation marks, or else it'll look for the ending quotation mark and it'll also give you an error. Hope I'm not going too fast. So, and then once we have our code written, we press run, and then it gives us the output. In terms of strings, we don't have to always use single quotation marks. We can use double quotation marks as well. And it's just a matter of what you kind of prefer. So yeah. Any questions up till now? Please feel free to post questions into the class chat. Your TAs will answer them. In Python, we also have a lot of operators. So these can be, I guess, like arithmetic like operators like addition, subtraction, multiplication. This symbol is division, just normal division. If you have two of them, it becomes integer division, which means that it'll basically round your answer to an integer number. So if I had like 2.5, it'll become like a 2, basically because it just chops off that decimal. If you have two asterisks, it doesn't become multiplication, but it becomes exponents. And then this percent symbol is something called modulus. We won't go too far into it, but basically, if you know the mod function in math, it does the same thing. If you don't know it, you can do a quick Google search. But basically, it's the remainder you get when you basically it's the remainder you get when you divide a number by another number, if that makes sense. So if I have like 3 mod 2, that'll equal 1, because if I like subtract 2 from 3, the remainder I'll get at the end is 1. I don't know if that makes too much sense, but yeah. The next one is relational. So this is if something is less than something, if something is less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, greater than. Equals is checking if two things on both sides are equal. If they're both the same, then it returns something called a Boolean that we mentioned earlier. It'll return true. If not, it'll return false. If there's an exclamation mark in front of it, it'll return not true. Yeah, this is a lot of content, and we're kind of skimming over it, but you guys will need to know these different operators. If you have any questions regarding them, feel free to ask them in chat, and maybe like take notes on this particular page, or take a screenshot or whatever. Logical operators are kind of like relational operators, some of them. So like the AND is basically saying if something is true and something is true, then it becomes true. If one side is true, the other side is false, then it becomes false, if that makes sense. Or you just need one of them to be true. So true or false returns true, because one of them is true. True or true still returns true. False or false will return false. Not means it just becomes opposite. So if I say not true, that means it's false, right? If I say it's not false, then it becomes true. So kind of like the opposites. A lot of content, yes. So we've kind of covered a few things. We're going to do a progress check. So So the first program I want you guys to write in your replit is something that adds two numbers. So let's say like 1 plus 1, and then you will need to print that output. Once you guys have it into the REPL, I want you guys to kind of copy what you wrote in REPL and then paste it into the class chat. And then your TAs will kind of check it. Actually, one thing, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. Before you guys paste it into the class chat, there is a way to kind of get the output on Discord itself. So I can try. It's kind of hard to show without sharing my screen. But if you go onto the Discord class chat and do, I think it's like left backslash and then type run and then space Python. Let me try to share this screen instead. Like this. Okay, it gave me an error because we don't have code inside of it yet. And then inside of it, give me 1 second. I'm trying to type in some code for you guys. Yeah, what Ashank said. So this is the backtick. If you don't have it on the keyboard, you can just copy and paste it. Here. So this way, you guys can run your code on directly on Discord. So here, I'll show you guys. If you guys write this, run Python, and then the backtick, so 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to say like print 1 plus 1. You can basically put anything you want inside the parentheses, and it will evaluate it and then give you the solution, right? So, three backticks. There's a thing I should said, yeah, just following that. If I write that, this bot will kind of give you output. You know you got it right. Okay. Three of you guys just got errors. Make sure you use make sure you guys put the backticks in. There should be 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. Yeah, like this one. That's good. Here, I'll put the command right here so you guys can look at it while trying it out. So it should look like this. If you guys need a reference, check the resources channel. There's a screenshot of how we do it. Yeah, I'll give you guys a moment to test that out. Okay, 1 more minute for you guys to try out the problem. If there's any questions, feel free to ping any of your TAs or myself included. Okay, I'm going to continue on while you guys are trying. So the solution, you guys can probably skip ahead and see, but it should just be this print 1 plus 1. I know some of you guys tried doing some other stuff. That's fine. But yeah. Moving on, we have something called variables. So variables are, it's like the next thing after data types. It's the way we store data. So instead of having to constantly compute something over and over again or constantly do any kind of task over and over again, this is a way we can store something. So we declare a variable by writing the name of the variable, followed by equal sign, and then the value that variable is going to hold. And as noted, a variable is something, I guess like in English, is something that can is a variable, right? So it's something that can change. So you can reassign variables, kind of edit them while you use them. So we start with a variable called a, and it's declared because there's an equal sign that follows it. A single equal sign and not a double equal sign. And then we assign 5 to that value, right? And then the next line, we reassign a to a string called hello. And we know it's a string because it has quotation marks before and after it. And then after it, we edit a by saying the new a, which is still the same a, equals the old a, the value it previously held, and then we're going to add no to it. So do note that these arithmetic e plus sign, although you can do addition with it, like in the previous example, you can also add strings with it. So if I have a which held the variable hello before, and we're going to add no to it, right? So it just kind of smushes the two together, and now when we print the new a, we get hello no. This can be quite a confusing topic because you can't do this in math, right? We can't have the same variable on both sides and something adds, right? And it'll tend to be false in math. But we can do this in Python because it's basically saying we're going to make a new variable called a, and then what's it going to equal? Oh, the current variable of a. What's the current variable of a? Right now it's hello, right? And I want to add note to it. Just feel free to ask questions in the class chat for any questions. The next thing we have are functions. So if you guys have probably seen functions in math, heard of functions. And functions are something we can do to increase readability and efficiency. So what does that really mean, right? It basically means kind of like variables. It's more of a complex variable in a way. It's a way so we don't have to constantly write the same code over and over again. So let's say I have a line of code that adds 2 things, right? So like I have to add 3 and 5, and then after that I have to add 2 and 4, and I have to add a bunch of numbers. And I don't want to write the same thing every single time. So how can we make that more efficient, right? You use something called functions. When we make a function, it's a bit more complicated than just making a variable with the equal sign. So the key word to declaring or creating a function is the def. EF. It's like kind of defined, right? The name of the function is called sum. And inside of it, the parentheses, we put the inputs. This might be a bit confusing, but right now A and B are just placeholders. They're not the actual inputs themselves. It's saying in the future, when I use this function, it's just going to take 2 inputs. The first one is going to be this value A, and the second one is going to be B. And then we follow up with it by the colons and then an indent. This is important because it shows that the next lines are going to be part of this function. Return means when this function is called, what is it going to return, right? Because if you guys know functions from like maybe math class, there's always going to be an input, and then you do something with that input, whether it's like a complex math equation, like maybe like a quadratic equation, whatever, and then it gives out an output. So this is saying return a plus b. So whenever someone calls the function sum, and then they give you two inputs, we're going to add them together and then return it. Yeah, this is kind of a summary. So the inputs are a and b, and the output is a plus b. How do we use a function, right? So we made a function here using the def statement. We're going to use a function, or I guess a technical term would be calling a function by writing the name of the function, and then as before, parentheses, and then we'll put the two inputs in here. You can have one input, three inputs. You can even have no inputs, but if you want an input, it must have the same number of inputs as the ones you declared. So right now, when you say sum 3, 4, what it's going to do is this Python program is going to go back in your code and look for where you define sum, right? So it's going to go here and see that, oh, you define sum to be given a and b, we want to return a plus b. In this case, 3 becomes the a, and then 4 becomes the b. And then it's going to see what do we return. We return a plus b, so 3 plus 4. So it's going to return 7. Give that value to x, and then we get a 7 out. If you guys want to see how this works in REPL, we can just make a fun function for class. So let's say we have function. Instead of sum, let's do subtract. You can take, doesn't always have to be a and b too. Those are just variables that we created just for the function. So instead of a and b, we can do like x, y. And you must separate them by a comma. If I combine x and y, it'll think of it as one variable. So you must separate them by commas. You don't need a space. X, Y. Don't forget the colon, because if you do, you're going to get an error and you're going to wonder why Python is mad at you. Ensure, and it automatically kind of indents. If it doesn't do that, make sure you press tab so it indents in and knows that this is part of the function. We're going to return x minus y. If I run it like this now, it's not going to do anything because I made a function but I never used it, right? As you can see, it outputs nothing. So let's say you want to print, and then we want to, let's say, subtract two numbers, right? Subtract. So what this is going to do is when Python reads this line by line, it's going to make this function and see, oh, print, what do I print, right? We're going to compute a value first. So subtract goes here. We need to give it two inputs. Let's do like 5 and 3. And it gives us 2. If that's kind of hard to see how it works, we can, I guess, simplify this, or I guess make it a bit easier to see using variables. So let's say you can create variables inside a function as well. So let's make another variable called d and set that equal to x minus y. This is going to do just the same thing, but it'll kind of expand it out a bit more so it's not as compact. So what this is going to do is now you get x and y, subtract them, and it's going to give it to this variable z, and we're going to return z. We're going to make another variable called total, and let's set that equal to subtract 5, 3. Now we're going to compute this value and put it into this variable, and we want to see what this variable is, right? We can put total. This is essentially the same thing, but in case the last example was a bit confusing to follow, this kind of expands it out a bit more. Okay, going on. We have, similar to the print function, we have an input function. So while the print was kind of a way for you to output something, the input is a way for you to input something. Kind of funny, right? So the way we use the input function is it's a function that we don't have to make. It's a function that Python already has made for us, similar to the print function. The technical term for these functions are called built-in functions, right? We don't have to make functions. Like the other example, like the sum function, like this one, is more of like a custom function we just made just for us to use. This, on the other hand, is something we don't need to make and we actually can't make. is something that Python has already made for us to just use freely, right? So it basically allows a user to put in input directly into the program itself. So in this example, we're taking a variable x, and what it's doing is it's going to equal is the value the user inputs. What the user inputs the variable does not know what the user is going to input, but when this line is called, it's going to print what is your name, followed by a space. So if you see here, the first line prints what is your name, space, and it gives the user the opportunity to type something. Oops. So let's say I type David, right, my name, right, and then press enter, and it goes to the next line, and it says print your name is. And then when I do that addition thing that we talked about earlier, and add the variable x. A little complicated, right? But basically what they're saying is x is going to be the value of whatever the user inputs. So if I inputted like, let's say Ashank, then it's going to say your name is Ashank. We can try this out here on the replet. We'll keep the function just for now. Let's say class, today's class equals input something. And then after that, I can do something with this variable or just print it as is. I'm going to just print it and see what we print out. I run this. I say input something. And notice how there's a space here, and everything here is exactly as I've written out here, right? I'm going to say hello. Press enter, and it does the next line, right? You don't need to have something in the input. So I can just take all this out. Just make sure you have the parentheses so Python doesn't go crazy. It's a blank line, but notice how the cursors are allowing me to kind of type something, right? So I can say, hi there. And it kind of gives it right back to me. I can take other things as an input, like for example, if I was given a number, I can add to it. So today's class plus 5. And this kind of means I need to give it a number, right? So, or instead of a number, like the example, let's do, you can just say class, right? If I say hello. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to add this. Basically why it didn't work before is because I added it to this, but I never assigned it to anything, right? It's kind of like how we talked about updating variables earlier, or like editing them. So basically what this does is it takes today's class, and then it adds this to it, but assigns it to a new variable called today's class. So it should work now. The next progress check is going to be kind of a challenge, but we encourage you guys to work through it. So the problem is, is to write a function addition takes in two inputs a and b, represent the lengths of the legs of a right triangle. The function should calculate the hypotenuse using the Pythagorean theorem and return. It should return the hypotenuse. I apologize for that. Something might have happened. So we encourage you guys to hop onto Replit and make a function. Oh, this is the same thing. Okay. Calculate hypotenuse. It should be the same thing. That takes two inputs, leg 1 and leg 2, and then you calculate the length of the hypotenuse with using the Pythagorean theorem. It's right here for reference, and return the side of the hypotenuse. If that makes sense. I'll walk through this problem in about 10 minutes. So at 6:40 in Pacific time or 9:40 Eastern time. Once you guys have a possible solution, please send it into the chat, into the class chat. Just to give you guys a hint, I'm going to go back a few slides. This operators will be really useful for computing the value of the hypotenuse. I'm going to take a screenshot of this and send it into resources because you guys will most definitely need these. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat or unmute. This is a big jump from what we started with today, so we don't expect you guys to just be able to get through this problem. For those of you that are a bit ahead and using a math library, there is an approach that doesn't require you to just kind of have to think outside the box. Think in a more mathematical term. If you guys are stuck anywhere, feel free to unmute or to text in the chat. Or you can always DM me privately. Okay, Yusuf, you're lost. Can you tell us like where you're lost? Is it creating a function? Is it the logic behind it? A bit of both. Okay, so I'm going to, while you guys are working, I'm going to start writing a solution for this, and I will walk you guys through it slowly, right? I'm going to delete all this because we don't need it. So the first thing to do is we need to make a function first, right? If you go back to the problem, function called calculate hypotenuse, so that's the name of the function. And we define function with the words def. And as you can see, it kind of like lights up, right? It turns blue. That means that it's like Python notices that this isn't just like a number, like a random like combination of characters we're typing, but something that Python recognizes, which is a good sign. And then we're going to write calculate hypotenuse with the parentheses, of course. So we're going to kind of follow the format we did. If you guys still need to see this problem, you guys can hop onto the Google Slides and it should be there. If you go back to this slide, not this slide, we have the name of the function, parentheses, the inputs, however many we need. We don't need any, but we could have 10, 100, 1,000, which would be pretty annoying, but as many as we need, and closes it with the parentheses and then a colon, right? So we're going to have two inputs. I believe they were called this one, leg 1 and leg 2. Leg 1, leg 2, and then close it off with the colon. We go back to our example right here. Next lines all have to be indented. It means that it's part of the function itself. So we're going to go here, automatically indents, and then I'm going to do the logic behind computing the hypotenuse, right? So if you go back to this slide, I believe it was this, right? Hypotenuse is equal to the square root of leg 1 squared plus leg 2 squared, which is kind of a lot of, I guess, stuff. We're going to use our operators for this, right? So let's find the square root of leg 1 first. So let's say leg 1 squared equals, and I'm using this underline character here to connect them and make it one string. So I'm not one string, one variable. So I'm going to make a variable called leg 1 squared. It's going to be leg 1 times leg 1. You can multiply by itself or use this character, which means we're squaring something, right? We're not squaring, it's exponent. So leg 1 times leg 1, well, that's really just leg 1 squared. Leg 2 squared, shoot, my bad. Leg 2 squared is equal to leg 2 yourself. What do we do once we have leg 1 squared and leg 2 squared? Well, we're going to add them first. So we're going to say added equals leg 1 squared plus leg 2 squared. And then we're going to take the square root of it. So it'll be hypotenuse, right? Is equal to added. And this is the part that a lot of you guys are kind of confused with. How do we take the square root if we didn't learn about a square root function, right? None of the operators that we learned about are square root. Well, taking the square root is really just taking the exponent of something to the 1/2, right? Does that make sense? If I take the exponent of 4, if I take 4 and then run an exponent to the so 4 to the power of 1/2, that equals 2. Because that's the same thing as saying 4 square root of 4. So I'm going to the exponent and write 0.5. Once we have the result, we need to give it back, right? So we take the inputs, we did all our logic, our big brain thinking, and now we need to output it somewhere, right? Going back to our example, where's the example? This slide. We do this by writing return and then whatever it is that we want to return. Return hypotenuse. That's all good. And this is technically the solution, but we want to check if it's right? So we need to use this function. We do this by calling the function. So we're going to say solution is equal to calculate hypotenuse. I'm going to give it two inputs. Let's say 3 and 4. When we say this, when Python runs this, it's going to look at this and say, okay, let's make a function, calculate hypotenuse, it's going to do all this amazing stuff. And then now we're going to make a variable and it's going to equal calculate hypotenuse. It's going to go here and say calculate, and it's going to go here and it's going to ask, what's leg 1? It's going to say 3, and what's leg 2? 4, all good, all the variables all the needed inputs are filled. It's going to calculate leg 1 squared, leg 2 squared. It's going to add them together, and then it's going to find a hypotenuse by getting this added value and taking the square root of it. And then once we have that value, we're going to return it here, right? That's the solution. And then we want to print the solution so we can see it in our screen. That's fine. And if you're confused why it's 5, that's because according to our formula, If we have 3, 3 squared is equal to, here. So if we just want to write it here, 3 squared equal to 9, 4 squared equal to 16. Add the 2, you get 25. And we want to take the square root of that, right? So if we take the square root of 25, we get 5. This isn't code. This is just me taking notes on the side so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Was that kind of clear? If you guys have any questions, feel free to ping me in the chat. I'll definitely take a look at it. If you guys want the solution, I'll also add it to the resources at the end of this class. Yeah, of course. Yusuf, I would say try to see if you can do this by yourself. So don't take this, instead of writing it the same way, see if you could do something different. Maybe like not use these variables, change the name of the variables, and kind of get a feel for it. Because you will most definitely need it on the homework problems, which I will go over in just a few minutes. Kixon, you can do half. If it's not working, you can always just type in 0.5. Sometimes if you miss the parentheses, it'll be... Okay, writing comments, that's not a dumb question. That's actually an amazing question. So comments are what? It's basically just like little side notes that you can leave in the code. I'm pretty sure you guys can still see my screen, right? It won't affect the code itself, but it'll kind of give you a reminder of what it does, right? So let's say this wasn't a super short function, but something really long. And I want to know what it is. So I can write a comment by writing a hashtag, is shift and 3 on your keyboard. And I can just write whatever I want. So I can write just gibberish, or I can write this function finds the hypotenuse. I can run it, right? And it won't affect anything. Let's say this is also useful if I'm writing code and I want to comment a line out. Yeah, Kayla, I'll cover that in a second. So let's say I don't want to print it actually. I just don't want to see the answer, right? I can write a hashtag in front of it, and now that line is kind of commented out. And I can always bring it back by erasing the deleting the hashtag. But if I want to see what this code is like without this line, if I'm having an error, I can always just run it. And yeah, it prints nothing because we commented out, right? The hashtag is the only comment that you really need. Sometimes you might want to comment out a huge chunk of code. For that, you can do a slash and then I believe, no, it wasn't this. It was three quotation marks. So you start with 3 quotation marks, and wherever you end the 3 quotation marks, like I could end it here, all this will be commented out. If I run this, I'm going to get an error. And this is more of a complex topic, but it's because I'm trying to return something without ever taking an input. So if I run this, it's gonna just ask me why I did that. But the only comment you really need to remember, so you don't have to remember all the comment styles, is the hashtag. The space between numbers and signs matter. I'm not sure. Oh, so like if I'm computing here, no, Python does not care where you put spaces, but it does care where you put comments. So I don't need this comment anything, I could do that. I also don't need the spaces here. Those are all just so we can read a bit better without having to squint our eyes. But yeah, if you miss the space here, there's not going to care. Indents do matter, however. If I don't indent it, it won't consider it as part of the function. Notice how I didn't indent this part. If I indented it, then it would all be considered as part of this function. And just this function basically wouldn't work because um, it would be part of a function, right? And then it's calling it. It means I can't access the variable solution. Is Python used for webs or apps or both? Python, you can do some level of web development and app development with Python. Especially for app development, there is a library called Kivy. We won't cover web development or app development in this specific course. Taking this course will definitely give you the strategies to pursue web and app development. And if you're interested in creating a website or app for your final project, there are some resources that can help you with it, but it won't be something that we explicitly cover in class. If there are any questions that you would want me to show you on Replit, please feel free to ping me. Yeah, I can show you Kexen. Okay, so Kexen asked if we can do like custom input sub legs, right? So instead of having to put 3 and 4, what if I wanted to give it a number, right? Basically make a calculator, right? A hypotenuse calculator. So we can do this by making 2 variables. So let's say we want to make a variable like input 1. It will be just input. Input a leg. I'm going to copy this and I'll type it out again, and then I'll want to make input 2. Can't do the same variable because then it'll just override the first one. Input another leg, or I can do the same thing, right? I'm going to use those 2 inputs as legs. What this is doing is now, whatever I put into here is going to be come over here. Wherever I come here, the string I put is going to come here. When I run this, it's not going to give me the answer that I may be looking for, right? So I can enter any number, right? Like 5, 6. But when I press enter here, it's not going to give me a number. Instead, it's going to give me an error. The reason why it does this is something that we did not explicitly cover in the presentation, but it's something that you will definitely need for your homework. We do make the homework problems a bit more challenging, at least some of them, than the things that we covered in class. So basically what's happening is when I input 5, input doesn't take it as a number. Whenever I input something into a computer, into the Python, it's going to take it as a string. That's because I could have inputted something else. I could have inputted like hello, and then like there. It's not going to know how to take the square root of hello squared plus there squared, right? So basically, whatever I give it is going to make it a string, because anything can be a string. This means that we need to convert whatever we put in here into an integer, or at least a float. Because those two, if we go back to data types, integer and floats are both numbers that we can do these number functions with. I'm going to choose integer because I personally like integers better. That means I need to convert input 1 into an integer. Python is nice and it has a function that we can use called int. It looks just like this. Whatever I put into here, it'll return an out. It'll output an integer. I'm going to write integer 1, and that's going to equal int input 1. What this is going to do is I get the input as a string. So input 1 is going to stay as a string. But when I come here, integer 1 is going to get that whatever I put into input 1 and then make it into a string. Not a string, an integer. So I can work with it, right? And the same thing for integer 2. This means I also have to change this. So now it takes the integer value instead of the string value. This is really important because there will be a lot of cases when you'll be given a string and you have to do something mathematical. So going back to our example, I'm going to write 3 and 4, and now it gives me 5. If I did not put a number value, so let's say I did 3 for the first one, but if I put like hi there, it's not going to know how to convert hi there to an integer, so it's going to obviously throw me another error. I hope that helped. And like I mentioned, this specific code example will be posted in the resources channel later on. But that is it for today's slideshow. But do not leave because we have a few homework problems. I believe there are. Yeah, so this was a solution. You can obviously do this, which is basically returning it as a string or just printing itself. So there are 3 homework problems, and they won't be submitted through Discord. Instead, it will be through something called Code Forces. Code Forces is a platform that you'll, in the future, may use for like coding competitions. I'm going to send you guys a link, and I'll post it into resources right now. The homework, in the homework channel, if you guys take a look at the homework channel and open up the assignment that we have built together for you guys. So this is a platform that a lot of competitions use. So being familiar with this type of platform will be really, really helpful for you in the future. Our class, I guess our homework assignments will take place here. So if after you guys make an account, I didn't make one yet, but you'll be able to see 3 problems that we have built for you guys, and they're in increasing difficulty. So the first one will be easiest, and then they'll get pretty harder. And we don't expect you guys to just be able to crack these down in like 10 minutes, maybe not in an hour. These problems will really cover everything, all the little details that I quickly skimmed over in today's presentation. And that's partly because this course goes over all of everything you will need in Python, plus a few extra in 4 weeks. And that's a really fast-paced class if you've ever taken any other coding classes before. So the first assignment is adding strings. So if we open the assignment, it basically shows you the problem itself. You don't really need to care about the details here, because we're not trying to trick you guys and trying to make you guys write a really complex programming thing, so it should all be fine. It tells you what the input is. The input is given through the input function that we discussed earlier. So if we go back to here, when I say input, the computer when I write it here and run it, I'm able to type in an input. But in Code Forces, that's how I'm going to be able to receive input from the computer. If that's confusing, please leave a message in the chat, in the class chat. And then I need to add these 3 strings, and then give an output, I am sad. And I output this by printing, like the print function that we talked about earlier. So when you will need to build this on Replit, or if you have another way of coding that you like, then you can obviously do that. You will need to export the file. You want to download the file that you have written. You can submit code here. I need to register, but you should be able to go to submit code, drop your code in, and then run it and see if it passes the test cases. The test cases are just different inputs that we have given, and then we're just trying to see if you can get the correct output. If you guys want to try this problem, you guys can start now. I'll stay in class until for like 10 minutes after class ends. But other than that, that is day 1. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them. If not, you guys are all free to go. Actually, one thing before you guys leave, I'm going to make an announcement in the announcements channel, and I just need everyone to react to it if you attended today's class. You don't have to go through the hassle of like a Google Forms or whatever. Yes, and I forgot to mention, the homework problems will close right as next class starts, so which is Wednesday, same time. If you guys have any questions doing these homework problems, please leave a message in either in the general chat. Yeah, that should be it for today's class. So you guys are all free to go. Just make sure to react to the announcement if you were here for today's class. How do I put the input? Yes, register a Code Forces account first. Yeah. Here, I'll stay back for 10 more minutes, so I'm going to make an account right now. I'll stream my screen after I put my password in. Oh, in terms of versions of Python, use Python 3.